Imagine you're watching a fairy tale unfold in real time, but every few chapters, the pages seem to have been rewritten. For years, the world was sold a story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as two rebels escaping a gilded cage for the sake of privacy and peace. But as we move into 2026, that story has quietly shifted into something much more complex, much messier, and frankly, much more calculated than any of us realized. There's a new rumor circulating through the hills of Montecito right now, a whispered plan for a grand televised vow renewal. On the surface, it's a celebration of nearly a decade of marriage. But look a little closer, and insiders are calling it something else entirely, a storytelling opportunity to anchor a new reality-style series. It makes you wonder, was the escape from the spotlight ever actually about leaving the cameras behind? Or was it just about making sure they were the ones holding the lens? The late Queen Elizabeth spent years truly regretting the decision to let cameras into royal life back in the 60s, believing it blurred the line between monarchy and celebrity. Now it seems the Sussexes are leaning fully into that blur, potentially turning their private vows into a season finale. To understand where they are going, we have to look at where the cracks first started to show. And it goes all the way back to the very beginning of their life as parents. The birth of Prince Archie was supposed to be a moment of national celebration, a unifying event for the British public. Instead, it became the first major glitch in the Sussex narrative. The palace officially told the public that Meghan had gone into labor in the afternoon, sending a wave of excitement through the media. But just hours later, a correction slipped out. Archie had actually been born early that morning. That's an 8-hour gap where the public was being told one thing while the reality was another. It wasn't just a small mix-up. It was a deliberate choice to control the timeline. Why say labor had just started when the baby was already home? In the world of the royals, where every second is documented for history, that 8-hour window created a vacuum that people have been trying to fill with questions ever since. It was the moment that privacy started looking a lot like secrecy, and once that line is crossed, it's very hard to walk back. This isn't just about a couple wanting privacy for a private moment. When it comes to the royal family births, are legal events. They involve signatures from official doctors and strict traditions that date back centuries. This is because of something called the of the body rule. It sounds archaic, almost like something out of a medieval history book, but it's a vital part of the British line of succession. To be eligible for the throne, a child must be physically born to the mother. It's a legal requirement to ensure the lineage remains transparent. But with Archie, the usual transparency just wasn't there. The medical signatures were missing from the public announcements, and the standard protocols were bypassed. This lack of clarity didn't protect their privacy. It fueled a fire of speculation that hasn't stopped burning for 7 years. When you refuse to show the paperwork in a system built on records, you invite the world to wonder what's being hidden. Even if there is a perfectly logical explanation, the refusal to provide it creates a ghost in the room, a nagging doubt that haunts every public appearance they make. But what if this wasn't just about birth certificates? What if the entire transition out of royal life was part of a much older blueprint? Before Meghan Markle ever stepped foot in a palace, she was moving through high-level networking circles in Toronto and at the Soho House in London. She was a woman who understood the power of influence long before she had a title. If you look at the people she surrounded herself with, then media strategists, PR experts, and power players, you see the same types of people managing her brand today. Some royal biographers argue that the move to California wasn't a desperate flight for safety, but a carefully timed brand rollout. The privacy they claim to seek looks a lot like a gate-kept marketing strategy. They didn't want to disappear. They wanted to curate. They wanted to take the prestige of the monarchy and transplant it into the fertile soil of Hollywood. But as we've seen recently, the soil in Hollywood can be very unforgiving. The transition was so smooth, the media deals so ready to be signed that it leaves a lingering question: was Megxit a reaction to pressure? Or was it the goal from the very first date at Soho House? As we hit the midpoint of 2026, the financial reality of that escape is starting to bite. The lifestyle in Montecito is staggering. Security costs alone run into the millions, and the upkeep on a $14 million estate is a never-ending drain on the bank account. For a while, the big deals kept the ship afloat. The $100 million Netflix contract and the Spotify deal were supposed to be their ticket to permanent independence. But then, the Spotify deal collapsed, and not exactly in a quiet way. Being called grifters by a top industry executive was a public blow that changed how the industry saw them. Now, in 2026, word is coming out that the Netflix partnership is tapering off. The original massive deal has reportedly been replaced by a first look agreement, which is industry speak for "we'll see if we want what you're making." Recent reports suggest they may be running out of money faster than anticipated, with a major lifestyle change needed within the next few years. When your income is tied to your reputation, and your reputation is being picked apart by every tabloid and newsletter, the pressure to produce shocking content becomes a matter of survival. But perhaps the most shocking development in 2026 is the way their professional lives are beginning to diverge. We are seeing what experts are calling a professional separation. While Meghan focuses on launching luxury products, Harry has been taking a very different path. He's been seen on solo trips to the UK and even made a secret visit to Kyiv in early 2026 to take part in a security conference. It was a risky move, leaning heavily on his decade of service in the British Army, but it also sparked a new feud with American political figures who criticized his diplomatic interference. It feels like Harry is trying to return to the man he was, the military-focused prince, while Meghan is leaning fully into the world of digital commerce and AI. Meghan recently joined the AI-powered fashion platform One Off as an investor. This platform allows users to shop her outfits in real time, giving her a cut of the profits. It's a smart move for her bank account, but it's reportedly created a massive headache for Harry's legal team. He's still fighting a high-stakes battle in the UK courts for security, and his critics are asking how can he claim he needs taxpayer-funded protection while his wife is using her public appearances as a literal shopping mall. The tension isn't just external, it's hitting Harry's own legacy. One of the most heartbreaking stories to surface in early 2026 involves Sentebale, the charity Harry co-founded in honor of his mother, Princess Diana. Legal papers were recently filed in London's High Court by the charity itself, suing Prince Harry for defamation. This follows a bitter fallout with the charity's chair, who accused Harry of running a coordinated adverse media campaign against the leadership. For a man who prides himself on his service, being sued by the very organization he built is a devastating blow. It highlights a bigger problem. Harry's inner circle has changed. Gone are the military brothers and childhood mates who once kept him grounded. In their place is a rotating door of consultants and strategic partners. When you lose the people who aren't afraid to tell you the truth, you end up in a bubble. And in that bubble, every decision feels like a strategic win, even when it's actually a reputational disaster. Harry used to be known as the most relaxed member of the royal family, but lately that ease has been replaced by a sense of constant online vigilance. He's reading the comments and he's feeling the weight of a world that is no longer taking him at his word. This brings us to the invisible line that has been drawn between California and London. King Charles and Prince William have clearly made a calculated decision to maintain their distance. They aren't reacting to the tell-all books or the reality-style documentaries anymore. Their strategy is silence, and in the world of high-stakes PR, silence is often the most powerful weapon. While the Sussexes are busy managing their perception, the Prince and Princess of Wales have become masters of showing a version of royal life that feels modern yet stable. The contrast is stark. On one side, you have an institution that is moving forward. On the other, you have a couple that seems stuck in a cycle of grievance. Every time Harry or Meghan tries to bridge the gap, it feels like they're met with a locked door, not because of malice, but because the royal family cannot risk the instability that comes with unresolved questions. The monarchy runs on public trust, and in 2026, that trust is the one thing Harry and Meghan are struggling to find. And then there are the children, Archie and Lilibet. This is perhaps the most sensitive part of the whole story. They are growing up in a world that is almost entirely curated. We see them in rare black and white photos or through the lens of a professional production. They are being raised far away from their cousins and their grandfather. But in 2026, the curation has taken a commercial turn. Reports have surfaced that the Sussexes have trademarked their children's names across various categories. Meghan's brand, as ever, recently released a line of luxury candles. Number 506 and number 604, inspired by the children's birth dates. Marketing materials even feature Mama's little helpers in gardening scenes, though their faces remain partially obscured. It's a dangerous game to play. When you turn your family life into a brand, you invite the public to treat your children like assets. If the goal was to give them a normal life, how does trademarking their names for high-end homeware fit into that? The children are the secret that keeps the public interested, but at what cost to their future? They are the only members of the royal family who are being raised as celebrities rather than public servants, and that's a distinction that will shape their lives forever. Ultimately, we are watching a battle for credibility. You can have the best PR team in the world and the most expensive legal team, but you cannot buy trust. Trust is built on consistency. It's built on a timeline that adds up and a narrative that doesn't change every time a new business deal is signed. Right now, the Sussexes are at a crossroads. The Hollywood experiment is at risk. People are starting to ask for something more than just the truth revealed. They want to see something real. They want to see a couple that can exist without the shadow of the palace looming over them. But as long as the story relies on controversy to stay relevant, they are trapped in a cycle they can't escape. The constant legal warnings and the shutting down of questions only make people more curious. In the age of digital transparency, the more you try to hide, the more people want to dig. As we look toward the end of 2026, the question isn't whether Harry and Meghan will stay in the headlines, they always will. The real question is whether they will ever be able to move beyond the managed version of themselves. Will they finally open things up and provide the clarity the public has been asking for since that first 8-hour gap in Archie's birth announcement? Or will they keep holding on to control, tightening the grip on their narrative until there's no room left for the truth to breathe? It's a high-stakes gamble, and the world is watching. Not just to see what happens next, but to see if the story they've been telling us was ever really about finding peace, or if it was always about finding the right price for it. In the end, this isn't just about royalty or celebrity. It's about the stories we tell and the price we pay to keep them alive. Harry and Meghan traded a system of tradition for a system of commercialization, and they've found that both come with their own sets of chains. As they prepare for their next moves, be it a televised vow renewal or more AI ventures, the one thing they can't manage is the public's growing need for authenticity. Because once the curtain is pulled back and the managed moments are revealed for what they are, it's very hard to ever see the fairy tale the same way again. The real story isn't what's being shown on the screen. It's what's happening in the gaps between the frames. And that is where the real truth usually hides. The financial pressure they are facing now is a ticking clock. When you have a staff of PR professionals and security teams that cost millions a year, the demand for high-profile content never stops. This is why we see the pivot into AI and lifestyle brands. But the As Ever brand has already faced its own set of hiccups, with trademark rejections and naming conflicts that make it look like the careful planning they speak of might be a little more chaotic behind the scenes. It's a far cry from the effortless grace of the royal family's established brands. This professional separation we're seeing between Harry and Meghan might be their last attempt to save the brand, splitting into two distinct paths to see which one the public actually wants to follow. Harry the diplomat or Meghan the mogul. But if the two brands can't find a way to align without creating legal and social contradictions, they might find themselves in a position where they are no longer just escaping the palace, but escaping the very brand they worked so hard to build. While Meghan navigates the high-stakes world of Silicon Valley AI and luxury lifestyle launches, Harry seems to be drifting further back into the shadows of his past. There's a quiet whisper coming out of London right now about the Royal Vault, a collection of documents and private letters from the late Queen's era that have yet to be released to the National Archives. In early 2026, rumors surfaced that these files contain more than just historical records. They supposedly hold the full story of the tensions leading up to Megxit, including internal memos that could contradict the version of events we saw in their Netflix documentary. The palace has remained tight-lipped, but the mere existence of these records acts like a ticking clock over the Sussexes' credibility. If these documents were ever to see the light of day, would they reveal a couple who was pushed out, or a brand that was already looking for the exit sign before the wedding bells even rang? Then there's the issue of the As Ever trademark turmoil. You'd think a global icon would have a seamless launch, but 2026 has been a year of relentless legal roadblocks for Meghan's new empire. Every time her legal team tries to lock down a name for her luxury jam stationery or lifestyle products, they hit a wall of pre-existing small businesses claiming the same names. It's led to a string of quiet rebrandings and administrative delays that make the whole operation look more like a struggling startup than a royal-backed empire. Insiders say this has caused massive friction between Meghan and her high-powered agency WME. The agency reportedly wants her to pivot back to traditional media, while she is determined to become the next Martha Stewart. This vision gap is creating a sense of chaos behind the scenes that no amount of glossy PR can fully hide. And let's talk about the psychological toll of this professional separation. Harry is reportedly feeling exposed in more ways than one. By early 2026, the UK Home Office had doubled down yet again on their refusal to provide him with state-funded security. This has led to Harry essentially becoming a ghost in his own home country, staying only in high-security military-adjacent locations and avoiding any public interaction that isn't pre-vetted by his own private team. It's a far cry from the prince who used to walk through crowds with a grin and a handshake. The isolation is becoming visible. While Meghan is seen at glitzy AI summits in San Francisco, Harry is often photographed looking somber and solitary. This growing distance between their public personas isn't just a business strategy, it's starting to look like two people living in entirely different realities. The most controversial element of 2026, however, is the royal protocol breach that happened during Harry's secret trip to Ukraine. Reports suggest he didn't just go for charity. He allegedly met with high-level officials without clearing it with the British Foreign Office first. This is a massive no-no for a member of the royal family, even one who has stepped back. It creates a diplomatic nightmare for King Charles, who is trying to maintain a strictly neutral and official stance. By acting as a freelance diplomat, Harry is playing a dangerous game that could lead to his titles being reviewed by Parliament once again. The freedom they wanted in California was supposed to be from the rules of the palace, but they are finding out that the world of global politics and international business has rules that are just as rigid, and the consequences for breaking them are much more public. The question we have to ask ourselves as we look at the wreckage of the last few years is, was the price of independence worth the loss of influence? In 2026, the Sussexes have more control over their image than ever, but they seem to have less impact. They are no longer the future of the monarchy, but a high-end curiosity in the celebrity ecosystem. As the legal battles over Sentebale and the birth records continue to churn through the courts, and as the As Ever brand struggles to find its footing, the managed story is becoming a heavy burden to carry. Every move they make is now a calculation. And in a world that is increasingly looking for something real, being calculated is the quickest way to lose your audience. The real exposed truth might not be a single secret, but the realization that when you trade your heritage for a brand, you eventually run out of things to sell. Is this the beginning of a new chapter or the final act of a story that was always destined to burn too bright and too fast? The world is watching, and for once, Harry and Meghan aren't the ones in control of the ending.